We're going to get started today. I'm really excited to welcome you all to today's informational seminar or webinar on how to fill out the LCA survey. And I'm Brad Gething, Vice President of Science and Technology for NWPCA. I've been working on the LCA project since its inception, since the first one we did. And we're here to do the next iteration of that. And I'm really here to introduce our speaker for today, Sevda Rosenbaum from Beef Environmental. She will be she's the expert who will be performing our LCA analysis. And for those of you who participated in the past or have been around for a bit, she might seem familiar to you. She was the one that performed our first LCA. When she was working with the Forest Products Lab as a postdoc and fellow. And so she's very familiar with our industry. She's been helping us for really several years now. Is relatively familiar, and she had so much fun doing the first LCA that she agreed to do the second one for us. But we're really fortunate to have her. She knows these kinds of things inside out and backwards, and she really did a great job on the first one. And so she's here to really walk us through a little bit about why we're here, and then the nuts and bolts of filling out this iteration of the survey. Before I turn it over to her, just a couple housekeeping items. This session is being recorded, so we'll be able to distribute it out to you all after the fact for you to go back and reference. We will be able to share the slide deck if you're interested in that. And also there is a Q&A that you can submit your questions to. Please feel free to do that throughout, and then we'll address those at the end in the Q&A session. So Sevda, I'm happy to pass it over to you.
Yep. Hi everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I will just start with the agenda for today. So today's webinar will cover introductions for JBE team, talk about LCA briefly, provide an overview of the LCA EPD project and the data collection process. We will mainly focus on the data collection, therefore we'll move quickly through some slides to stay on time, but please feel free to reach out with any questions later on. Here's the JBE team. I am Sevda. As Brad mentioned, I was with the Forest Service over 5 years, and I helped to develop the first PCR and industry average EPD for wooden pellets, and I'm excited to support this update. We also have Brandy Sebastian. She will support the project in an advisory role. She has a deep experience in industry-wide LCAs. And we also have Gia, and she will provide technical support for the project. And a brief introduction to JBE. JBE is a boutique environmental services firm founded in 2015. We are a team of 20 experts, but we are also supported by part-time experts as well. And we are offering services in LCA, ESG, greenhouse gas inventories, corporate reporting, and more, where you can find more information in the slide, where the slides will be provided to you after the webinar. And now I will go over and talk about LCA very briefly. A key strength of LCA is that it considers all life cycle stages of a product or a service and a wide range of impact categories, which makes it a very strong environmental assessment methodology, giving a holistic view of environmental performance of a product or a service. In this figure, you can see typical life stages included in an LCA study. And a credible LCA follows ISO 14040 and for 4 standards. And for EPDs, we also need to be aligned with additional standards that are listed in here. There are four major LCA phases per ISO standards, which are all interrelated. And you can find details in each phase in the slide. A typical study starts with the goal and scope, where you identify the study, the objective, and the scope of your study. You set the boundaries and level of detail, and then comes the inventory analysis, where you collect data, develop an inventory, and impact assessment stage is where you quantify the potential impacts, and then the last stage is interpretation. Where you do the completeness check, sensitivity check, and you interpret the results of your study. And when I say all these stages are interrelated, once something is different or the scope changes in any stage of the LCA, you can go back to your goal and scope and change your goal and scope to be in line with your study. A product category rule sets, which is PCR, sets rules for the LCA methodology that's used to generate an EPD. This includes the system boundary options, scope details, and other requirements as well. In this work, the updated PCR for wooden pellets is the one that we are going to be following, which defines the rules for the study. And here are some definitions for the scope, some parameters that are described for the scope of the study. And for the system boundary, it can be cradle to gate or cradle to grave. There are other options in the PCR, but for this study, it's going to be cradle to grave analysis. I just want to briefly go over why generate an EPD, an LCA in the following slide. An EPD is a third-party verified document that provides transparent and credible environmental information that can be used business to business or business to consumer communication. It's brief, easy to understand, and very user-friendly. And it's basically a document for that can be used for marketing your product or service. And here are other benefits of LCAs and EPDs. They support both marketing, but they also support internal improvement in terms of helping to improve the system efficiency and sustainability of your system. You can go through the details and again, reach out to us with any questions. So EPDs are developed using the ISO standards and the PCRs, as mentioned before. PCRs provide sector-specific LCA rules for developing LCA for that specific sector. And EPDs are typically valid for 5 years, as well as the PCRs. And the current EPD for the industry-wide wooden pellets will expire in July 2025. That's why we are here to update the EPD as it's going to be expiring soon. And the PCR has just been published last month, and we're going to be updating the EPD based on the new PCR rules. And now I will just briefly go over the project. So the goal of this project is to produce and publish an industry-wide EPD. But in addition to this effort also brings several other benefits to the industry as listed below. The LCAs and EPDs can be used to track the performance improvement over time, and it can assess the hotspots of a life cycle of hotspots in the supply chain that could be used to decrease the environmental impact of a product. And as I mentioned, it can be used for NWPCA and its members to communicate the LCA results externally. And this slide provides more information, highlights the benefits of the industry-wide LCA and the benefits of participating in the study. One key aspect I want to point out is that participants have the option to receive a customized report for their manufacturing operations at the end of the study. And this is an overview of the project steps from kickoff through final EPD publication. I will not go into details, but this provides detailed information of what's expected to be completed at each task, each step of the project. And this outlines the LCA methodology in a very high overview that we will follow, which is fully aligned with the new PCR. We have the functional unit as defined in the PCR. System boundary is cradle to gate with use, repair, and end of life, which is basically cradle to grave. And the time period we're going to be using is the 2024 data, where the data will be collected for a 12 months of operation. Now I will go over the data collection process. Data collection is the most time-intensive part of an LCA. We basically gather input-output data for each facility's manufacturing system. I will walk you through the data collection templates that we have for this project in a few minutes, but I would like to, before we get into the data collection, I would like to talk about address how we handle data privacy and confidentiality. We sign NDAs with the companies who prefer to before they provide data to JBE. And for facility and company specific data, no data will be disclosed on a per facility or per company basis in the report. Only results will be presented, or the LCA, the inventory will be presented in an aggregated form. And to protect this, we will include at least 3 companies in why we are averaging the data, so the data cannot be backtracked. And we will use weighted averages for presenting the impact results and presenting the inventories, which again will be a way for protecting the individual company specific data as well. And it will ensure that only generalized data is shared. So before you provide data in the form of data collection templates, please reach out for signing an NDA with a signed NDA, so if you prefer to. Now I will transition to the data collection templates that we have on the NWPCA website. So there are 2 surveys. One of them is for new pellet manufacturing, and the second one is for the repaired, remanufactured pellets. So I'm going over the new pellet manufacturing first. So we have the first tab includes the survey instructions, which is the same for both surveys. So in here you can see there's part 1 for new wooden pellets and part 2 for remanufactured recycled pellets. And each survey has 5 sections. So section A is asking information about the facility overview, that the production rates, co-products generated, and types of input you have in terms of the wood input to the facility. Section B goes over the manufacturing process, which is seeking information on the utilities and other materials used in the processing of the pellets. And section C is on the waste generated at the facility and their destinations. And section D is it's related to part B, but it's only for electricity. It's looking into electricity use at the facility and information on which processes use what % of the electricity used at the facilities. So I'm just gonna walk through the information. So this first tab is asking just for general information to understand what type of processes you have at your manufacturing facility. And in section C here, we're asking for the contact information, facility information, including the location and also the contact person. Because the first step of once we receive data, we review the data and then we follow up with questions. So if you provide the contact person of the information of the contact person that who can reply our questions, that would be very useful. And section A is the facility overview. So in the first section here, we are looking into collecting the production data as well as the input data in rows D and E. So this is a little bit different from the previous survey because after the PCR committee meetings, we thought this is a better strategy in terms of understanding how much wood is used per pallet. So the column B here asks the amount of pallets produced at the facility, including the four types that are the focus of the industry average study, but also including the rest of the pallets produced at your facility. And column D and E is asking the board feet of the incoming wood used to manufacture these specific pallets. And it's also asking on row 14 if any other wood products produced in your facility that uses the incoming wood. We would like to have that data to be able to allocate the utilities between the pellet manufacturing and other type of products manufactured at the facility. And we are asking also the percentage of wasted lumber. So this is to understand how much waste you generate and how much of the incoming wood is converted to pellets at your facility. So basically, we're trying to make a mass balance, which was a challenge during the last survey because it was hard to calculate the amount of board feet of pellets produced at the facility annually. Therefore, we're trying to change the strategy and calculate it from the inputs coming to the system and the wastage information that the manufacturer can estimate. The second part is on the heat treatment, just trying to understand how much of your pellets are going through the heat treatment process. And in here, we're asking information for the incoming wood. And you're familiar with this questions, most probably. We're asking board feet coming in for different types of pellets, different types of wood coming in terms of lumber, how much of it is pre-cut lumber. We're asking the moisture content, if it's kiln dried or not. And we're also asking the sourcing region and type of lumber. This information will help us to use the most representative data for the upstream from the Forest Service because they have dry lumber, green lumber, rough lumber, and other options. So we would like to use the most accurate data as much as possible. And we have two tables, one for the hardwood, one for the softwood resources used in the system. And the following table is on the transportation data. It's basically trying to understand how much the transportation distances used to, we will try to calculate the impact for transportation distances based on the amount of lumber coming in and what's the average distance it's coming from. This section is on the wood scrap and wood co-products generated at the system. The first table is to have a sense of how much of the wood used on site, maybe as fuel or sold or used off-site, recycled. And we have the landfill and incineration options here. And the table below it is for co-products. So we would like to differentiate the co-products from the wood waste. The waste might be recycled. So anything that doesn't have economic value will be reported in the section C, which is the waste generated. And anything generated as wood scrap and sold as will be considered as co-products. And in here, we are looking to understand what's the amount and what's the destination. So it can be reported in the LCA report. Section B is the manufacturing data. We are basically looking at all the utilities used at the facility in this first table, except the electricity. And we are looking for percent usage at different processes. This might be a challenge, but if you can use your best estimation, that would be very helpful. And just to note that we have units in the tables, but please feel free to use any unit that's more convenient for you. If you have data in cubic meters or in different units, please feel free to delete this and use your own units. And if you have notes in any section, please feel free to type notes on the last column of each table. And the second table is on the material use, which includes fasteners, if you have chemical treatment, paints, and any type of oils. We also include the saw blades in this section too, if you can report, and these are all for annual use, and you can report how many saw blades you go through annually. And again, we're asking for some of the materials, we're asking what percent is used at which unit process. And here on the side, we also ask about estimated means and distance of transportation. So if you have supplier location, please feel free to enter the location as well, so we can estimate distances if you do not have the estimated miles. And the last section in this tab is for the packaging. We are asking what type of packaging is used annually and the amount used, along with the transportation distances of where you source your packaging materials. And section C is the waste generation. We are asking in column A, we listed some of the materials that we know are generated, that could potentially generated as a waste at a wooden pellet manufacturing facility. And in most of the tables, we have this other section at the end. If there are any materials missing here, please feel free to add. We're asking for the amount. You can add your own units. And we're asking how much of that material was the destination. Is it ending up in the landfill? Is it recycled or incinerated? Or if there are any other destinations, please feel free to add in the comments section. We're also asking the wastewater generation at the facility and its destination as well. If you are just discharging it to a river or a lake, or you're sending it to a wastewater treatment plant. So the last section is the electricity use. For the electricity use, we are using the same method that we provided last year. There are a couple of options to report this or calculate this. So the first one is simply reaching out to your supplier or looking at the utility bills and providing the total amount of electricity consumed at the facility for year 2024 and provide estimation on the percentage used at different processes. And the rest, this is basically the primary data and your estimation on percent at each process. But the other methods are basically on getting information on your equipment and calculating the electricity consumption at each. In here, there are options that you can select which process that you're assigning this to, let's say wood preparation and board shaping, and you write the yellow parts are for you to fill out. You provide the equipment type and you provide this information, and the blue cells are going to be calculating the amount of kilowatt hour per year and the calculation and the contribution automatically. This is similar to the previous method, but you will provide your annual electricity consumption here, and then you're going to provide information on each equipment you have along with the size of the horsepower of the equipment. And then this will automatically calculate the contribution to the electricity consumption. It's a rough calculation, but based on the annual consumption and horsepower of the motor, it's going to calculate the percent contribution for each unit process. And the electricity calculation using horsepower data is a similar method to the second one, the B, but just using a different equation and asking for different type of information. Again, the yellow cells are the ones that you're going to fill out. You can select the process type, you need to provide horsepower, efficiency, load factor, and the hours used per year. And based on this information, the kilowatt hour per year consumption is going to be calculated, and the contribution is going to be calculated automatically based on this. Is there any questions, or what do you think, Brad? Should we wait till the end for questions? Because I'm going to transition to the repair remanufactured pallet one.
There was one question related to Section A, and
Okay.
it was if the question was just, do we add rows in the document for all the different sizes on Section A? So, but I don't. I think for this case, and I wanted to touch this, but we're only for the purposes of the LCA, we're just doing 4840 pallets. Is correct?
Yes, that's correct. But we're asking the number of other pallets just to be able to allocate the utilities and other process inputs between the pallets that we are going to calculate versus the pallets that are not in the study.
Right. So for instance, if of all the pallets you manufacture, 50% of them are 4840s and then the rest are custom or a different size, you would put, other pallet total, whatever the total would be, 1,000,000 pallets for 4840 and then 1,000,000 pallets otherwise. And then when you do the calculations, 50% of the energy would be allocated to the 4840 pallets, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So hopefully, I think James, I saw you ask that question. Let me know if that answered it appropriately. And so
That's
another question came, allow to get information per board foot. Yeah, go ahead, Sevda. What do you think?
So that's a very good question. So last time around, it was really hard to get that information or calculate it. We tried to make a mass balance based on the information we collected, but it was not holding, the mass balance was not working out, and it was really tricky because we were not able to collect data on each pallet type produced along with the board feet of the pallet. So in this one, sorry, this is the other survey, but in this one, we decide to try a different approach and go from the inputs. So we will have the information on the board feet wood coming in and amount of pellet produced and the amount of wastage. That's how we are going to calculate the average board feet per pellet in the study. So, so let's say if this is 48 by 40, if you have 1,000,000 pellets produced, and if you provide information on how much board feet coming in, and if your wastage is around 10%, we will basically assume 10% of the board feet coming in is going to end up as waste or co-products, and 90% of that board feet is going to be converted to 48 by 40 stringer, for instance. Excuse me. And then we will calculate the average board feet for your 48 by 40.
And Justin, answer your question. I think I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but looking into the future, talking about carbon calculators, that is certainly related to, but that might be something in the carbon calculator approach that we might be able to nail down that a little bit better down the line. So we'll definitely take a note and think about how we might be able to approach that a little better.
True. Well, in that case, sometimes they do it for lumber manufacturing facilities, for instance. They report all sizes and number of lumber they're producing, and we calculate the board feet based on that. But based on my understanding and the discussions that there's so many different custom-made and different types of pellets manufactured at a pellet manufacturing facility, which makes it hard to report all the output to be able to calculate the board feet, the exact board feet coming out.
And so Justin had a couple follow-up questions and said that this is probably a good segue into the recycled, but if a facility does new and recycled pallets, do they need to fill out both of these surveys?
Yes, correct. So yeah, they're asking specific questions for each type. That's why it would be great if you can fill out them separately for new facility, for new pallets versus the remanufactured repaired ones.
And then finally, another question is fill this out per location, and you could do it either way. I think it would be easier for, say, if you brought it all together as much as best as you can into one one spreadsheet. But if you can't do that, then I guess if you have multiple facilities, how would you approach that, Sevda?
I think last time around we had some companies reported in a aggregated version. I guess it depends how many facilities you have. It might be better to have separate data if it's also possible and convenient for you. And the reason for that is we would, based on the location of the facility, we would use different electricity grid, and that might make a slight difference in the calculations. But alternatively, if it's easier and if you provide aggregated data, then we would like to know how much you produce at each facility so we can weight average the electricity grid per location to model it as a single data point. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yeah, I think so. And so if they're using an alternative energy source like solar, how do they report that?
Let me just go electricity use. Yeah, we have the total electricity consumption. We don't, I would just add a line and include it as an additional information because we should definitely consider that data in addition to grid data, or you can just specify what percent is coming from the solar. You can provide yearly electricity consumption and percent coming from the grid versus percent coming from the solar energy. Is there another question, Brad? I cannot see the messages.
No, I've got them. I think we just
Okay.
covered it. Great questions submitted, and so what? Go ahead. Why don't you go into this, and then I see a couple other questions coming in, but then we'll have time at the end to cover more questions.
Okay. This should be slightly fast. So this is the part 2 survey for remanufactured repaired pallets. Again, it has the survey instructions. The general information is a little bit different for this one. Since the content is different, we are asking for repair. If you're producing repair, remanufacturing, or if you have new pallet production, and what type of processes you have at the facility, and again asking for the contact information. And we also have the time period of data input. As I mentioned in the presentation, the data requirement is 12 months of operational data, and for this study we are aiming for 2024 data. And for the facility overview, again, the first table is for production data, and we're asking for the amount produced for stringer and block remanufactured and repaired pallets, and other pallets that are also produced at the facility. And we would also like to know the percent of repaired and percent of remanufactured pellets living at the facility. We'll try to specify the difference between the repaired versus remanufactured pellets at the study a little bit more. We weren't able to collect very specific data to differentiate the repaired and remanufactured pellets, but we're going to try this time around to have more precise data. The second table asking about the annual heat-treated pellet production at the facility. And this table is asking information for the inputs. And we are looking at the total recycled pellets inputs for the hardwood and the softwood ones, and also asking about what happens to that pellets that are coming in. Are they reused without repair? Are they dismantled, repaired, or if there are any other destinations, we ask you to specify and maybe include some explanation in the comments here. The second section of this is asking information on the new lumber input, and basically the same table that we went through in the other survey, asking if you're bringing pre-cut lumber, hardwood or softwood, and what region it's coming from, and other information specific to the wood. And we have different regions for hardwood and softwood, and these are in line with the data that the Forest Service publishes. They publish regional data for the lumber. That's what we're going to link this data to. That's why we're asking you to specify what region the lumber is coming from, the wood is coming from. Similarly, we're asking information for the wood scrap, and if you're generating co-products, what happens to those co-products at the end of at the facility, and the amount and what it's used for. Manufacturing, this basically the same. The only difference is the unit processes, because we have dismantling, board preparation, and pellet assembly repair. And again, asking for all the fuels, utilities used at the facility. And we are asking for inbound transportation for the wood in here and for the recycled pellets as well. The distance, if you can estimate the distance where you source your recycled pellets, provide an average or provide a worst case, so we can consider the worst case instead of the best case to be on the safe side, and also the type of new lumber coming in and their distance and transportation modes. In here, we have the same table on the material and resource inputs, and along with the transportation information. And if you package the repaired, remanufactured pellet at the end of the process, we're asking for information what type of packaging you use, the amount you use, and the distance from their suppliers. Section C, again, on the waste generated at the facility. For the steel scrap, for instance, how much you produce annually and what is the destination. And same for wastewater, if you use water at your facilities, where the wastewater goes, if it's discharged to an environment, river, lake, or it's sent to wastewater treatment plant. And for the electricity use, we have the same approach for each. You can either use one of the calculation methods based on the equipment type and specifications, or you can use the utility data that you have from your provider and try to estimate the percent used at different operations. So I will stop sharing and go back to the presentation, and maybe we can welcome questions at this point.
Oops, sorry, I was muted. Is there's another question about power factor? Is there an option for that?
No, it is not.
Okay.
That's one of the sections that needs to be filled out too. But if there are any missing parts that you do not have information, we can look into that, because last time around, Brad and I talked to equipment manufacturers and gathered a lot of information from them. So we can try to fill out the missing information.
Another question saved is, so if they do both new and recycled at one facility, do they give the totals on both sheets for the facility that does both, or do they prorate in some way between the remanufactured and repaired pallets? Oh, this is just for recycled. So if they're doing to be able to differentiate between remanufactured and repaired.
Yeah, if you can differentiate and provide information on that, that's what we are looking for, because so this is a part, repaired pallets is going to be a part of the new pallet manufacturing life cycle, since there's a repair in the use phase, and we're trying to capture it in the best way. And technically, assuming that the repaired pallets burden is lower than a remanufactured pallet burden, we would like to capture that. So technically, we're collecting data on the repaired pallets with the survey, not the remanufactured pallets. But last time what we did was we allocated, we knew the total number of remanufactured and repaired pallets, and we allocated the utilities based on the number, because we did not have specific information or estimation on how much electricity was used just for the repaired pallets versus the remanufactured pallets. But if you can differentiate, if you have estimation on that, that would be great to have that data. And we would like to work with that.
And so a follow-up question on the power factor question. They were referring to power factor that comes from the utility, not from the equipment itself.
Oh, from the utility company, we were for the annual consumption, we were referring to kilowatt hour electricity that is reported in the bills. It can be monthly bills that you receive from them, or if they can provide information on the annual consumption. Does that answer your question?
And Justin's typing, so we'll
Okay.
see if he has a follow-up. I'm just gonna, yeah, so he says that there's a kilowatt hour on the bill, and there's additional charge for power factor.
Oh, we would like to have the kilowatt hour data that's on the bill.
So, okay. And so I just wanted to show, I'm just going to share my screen real quick here. Don't worry, Seth, I'll just take over here. So there's we have a web page set up. It's just palletcentral.com LCA survey, or if you go to our homepage and you just type in LCA survey, it'll take you to this website. We really have this set up to be the hub for the survey project. We see you can access the surveys again here and the instructions. You see we have an announcement here for the webinar. We'll put a recording to the webinar here, and everybody attending, you'll be able to get a direct message on it. But and you'll also have contact information for Sevda and mine here as well. So if any of you have questions while you're crunching numbers, we're of course available to you on that, and this web page will be a resource for you all regarding that. And so, yeah, the what we hope for, and we know that this is not sit down and just start filling it out and then 10 minutes later you're done kind of survey. That this takes some elbow grease. We've put an initial deadline of June 16th. So we're giving you all a month to crunch the numbers and work through things. So hopefully that gives you all enough time to work through it. And so let's see, got a couple other questions here. How many companies are participating? Well, that's up to the industry, really. I mean, we have, we've set a certain number, but if we get more people participating than we anticipated, that's a good problem to have. So really, it's not about the company; it's about the number of pallets. So the last pallet market survey we did. The industry produced about 1.1 billion pallets in the United States. And for it to be considered a legitimate survey, we need to capture at least 10%. So we need to have a subset of the overall. So we need to capture data on 110 million pallets. And so that doesn't matter if you're small or big. We need the participation just because we need one type of facility. The more facilities we have, the better our industry average, the more representative it'll be as well. So we need everyone's participation on this, or as many as you all can. So hopefully so yeah, that's 110 million new and used combined. Our industry survey, we accounted for more new than recycled, but we need them both. And so, that's why we need some new manufacturers and we need recyclers. And for those of you that do both, you're the best because you give us data on both. All right, great questions. Where we have some time left if there are other questions, but if not, we can always give people some time back. And again, if you have questions, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to Sevda. You can consult the webpage. But now we've tried to make this as painless a process as possible. But we know that you could run into questions, and that's what we're here for. But now it's up to you all. But we'll do everything we can to get you across the finish line. And so, with that said, did I miss anything else wrapping things up that you can think of?
No, I think that's all. And again, please feel free to reach out. My contact is on the website. Very happy to help with the data collection process anytime, with anything.
All right. Well, we'll wrap things up for there. I want to thank you all for your participation. Again, this was recorded. You'll be able to access it at any time, and we'll look forward to seeing those surveys come in as you all finish them up. So, thank you all. Have a great day.